Can you call your supervisor?
All right, go for it. Exit the vehicle now. Exit the vehicle. Show me your hands.
Here. I'm here. What is your reason, sir?
Step out.
What is your reason?
Step out now. All right. Get on the ground.
No.
Get on the ground.
He asked a simple question. Why am I being pulled over? Seconds later, his car window was smashed, he was punched in the face, and dragged out by police, all caught on camera. But the real shock? No officer was charged. This isn't just one brutal arrest, it's a warning about how broken the system really is. Stay with me, because what you're about to see will change the way you look at justice in America. Comedian Katt Williams is raising his voice in response to a deeply troubling incident in Jacksonville, where a young black man's routine traffic stop spiraled into violent chaos at the hands of local police. What began as a simple pullover for minor infractions quickly devolved into brutality. Officers shattered the man's car window, struck him repeatedly while he remained in his seat, and ultimately yanked him out of the vehicle. The entire ordeal, captured on police body cameras, has since gone viral, sparking widespread outrage. But what's arguably even more alarming than the footage itself is what followed. Despite clear visual evidence suggesting excessive force, none of the officers involved are facing charges. The Florida State Attorney's Office conducted an investigation and, astonishingly, determined that the officers had not broken any laws. That decision has left the public incredulous. For many who've watched the footage, the conclusion doesn't match the reality they witnessed. And Katt Williams, who became visibly emotional when addressing the incident, is echoing that collective disbelief and frustration. For Williams, this isn't just about one violent encounter, it's about a system that continues to fail people of color. His reaction is personal too. Over the years, he himself has had multiple run-ins with law enforcement, and he claims that when officials couldn't pin anything on him, they shifted their focus to his children. His powerful words are resonating with many who see this event not as an isolated injustice, but as a symptom of a much deeper and long-standing issue, one that urgently demands attention and accountability.
Because here's the whole thing. You gonna charge me with child endangerment? After I adopted 7 children and had them for 14 years in this state? Really? You coming after my kids now? Because it was already a witch hunt. Now you...
Let's break down what actually happened during that now infamous arrest in Jacksonville. The event that has ignited public outrage and drawn passionate responses from figures like Katt Williams. It all began earlier this year when 22-year-old William McNeil Jr. was driving through the city and got pulled over by sheriff's deputies. The reasons they gave for the stop, barely more than nitpicks. They claimed he wasn't wearing a seatbelt and didn't have his headlights on, despite it being broad daylight. While those are technically traffic violations, the headlight rule is often a gray area, and rarely enforced with this kind of aggression. What followed, though, is critical to understand. McNeil didn't raise his voice, didn't act out, didn't run. Instead, he remained calm, asked a fair question, wanting to know the actual law he was supposedly breaking, and tried to make sense of why he'd been stopped in the first place. His composed demeanor makes one thing crystal clear. He wasn't trying to escalate the encounter. He was trying to survive it and understand it.
Oh, bro, I didn't do that.
It's called resisting, idiot.
There absolutely was force used by the arresting officers, and yes, that force is ugly. And just because force is ugly does not mean it's unlawful.
What unfolded next wasn't a calm exchange, it was a brutal breakdown of trust and basic human decency. Rather than responding with clarity or compassion, the officers escalated the moment with shocking aggression. William McNeil Jr. has since released video footage recorded from inside his own car, and what it shows is chilling. An officer, without warning, shattered the driver's side window. Then, while William remained seated, hands visible, body still, the officer began punching him through the opening. In the video, you can hear William trying to reason with them. He calmly asked what he'd done wrong, questioning the vague claim about his headlights being off during daylight. He even asked to see the specific law. "Can you pull that law up?" he asked. His tone wasn't angry. It was confused, scared, human. He requested a supervisor, clearly trying to de-escalate, but instead of answers, he got threats and violence. The officers soon yanked him from the car, rough and relentless. As multiple deputies joined in, William was struck again. By the time it ended, he had a concussion, a chipped tooth, and a split lip that required stitches. Despite the disturbing footage, which shows no sign of William reaching for any weapon, Florida's state attorney declined to charge the officers involved. One officer was taken off active duty, pending an internal review, but that's the extent of the consequences. According to police, William was supposedly reaching for a knife. Yet in the video, his hands are in plain sight. That justification simply doesn't hold up. The sheriff's office released body camera footage, doubling down on their position that while the officers used force, it wasn't illegal. One official even said, just because force is ugly doesn't mean it's unlawful, but many watching disagree. Force this excessive, this unjustified, demands accountability. As for William, he was hit with several charges, including resisting without violence, driving with a suspended license, and minor traffic violations. He pled guilty to some of the charges and served 2 days in jail. Now, he's speaking publicly, sharing how terrified and disoriented he felt during the encounter, and how he's still coping with the physical and emotional scars left behind. All he wanted, he said, was a simple answer. Why was I being pulled over? Why was I asked to get out of the car when I hadn't done anything wrong? He wasn't just confused. He was afraid, and for good reason. What makes this case so haunting is how blatantly the video contradicts the official police narrative. Their report paints William as hostile and aggressive, but the footage tells a different story. One of a young man trying to stay calm, trying to survive. And while this might sound like one isolated incident, it's not. It's part of a much broader crisis in America. The disproportionate targeting of black drivers for minor, often questionable, violations. The term driving while black isn't just a phrase, it's a lived reality for countless people. This case is a painful reminder of that truth. For many black Americans, traffic stops aren't just routine, they're moments loaded with fear, tension, and unpredictability. Ask around, and you'll hear stories like this over and over. Some have been stopped 5 times in just a couple months, others 20 or more. After a while, they stop counting. What sticks is the feeling, that slow, cold wave of anxiety every time red and blue lights flash in the rearview mirror. The experience is as psychological as it is physical. Even when you're obeying every rule, there's a quiet dread. Will I make it home? Your speed, your posture, your every movement becomes a calculation. Because as one officer once said, sometimes a person gets pulled over simply because they look like a suspect, even if all that means is having a broad nose. The recent Jacksonville incident makes this fear all too real. Even with video evidence showing excessive force and a peaceful driver, the officers responsible walked away without charges. The Florida state attorney saw no reason to prosecute, and that decision speaks volumes. This isn't about a few rogue officers, it's about a system designed to protect its own, regardless of what the footage reveals. That's why voices like Katt Williams resonate so deeply. After the viral video of William McNeil Jr.'s violent arrest, Katt didn't hold back. He shared a raw message. Police can kill you today and come up with a story for the news tomorrow. And he wasn't just speaking from sympathy, he was speaking from experience. Katt Williams has lived through this reality time and time again. Over the years, he's been arrested more times than he can count, jailed without convictions, targeted for no clear reason. Back in 2009, he was confronted by armed officers in a Walmart parking lot in Georgia. They seized some of his legally owned guns, but never filed charges. Looking back, Katt described the whole thing as a setup, a witch hunt. One of them had a pistol and a pocket full of bullets. He told Vibe, "They lured me outside, and then suddenly, I was surrounded. Next thing I know, they're calling the sheriff, saying I'm the threat." But it didn't end there. Not long after, the arrests kept coming. The most serious accusation came in 2012, when Katt was charged with child endangerment after police allegedly found guns and weed in his home. Those charges were later dropped, and Katt maintained it was just another attempt to discredit him. "They always find guns," he said. "I never leave without my girlfriend," his nickname for his firearm, was in the middle of an interview when someone brought it up. "You can look at my paperwork," Katt said. There were no drugs. Then he cracked a darkly honest joke. "Next life, I'm going to be white. I'm not taking no for an answer." Beneath the humor was exhaustion. Trayvon Martin was shot for looking like me, he added. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X died for telling the truth. So as a comedian, I know I'm not immune. They've locked me up 36 times in 36 months, but never once have you seen me on trial. That tells you something. They're messing with me. And now they crossed a line. They took my babies. Still, the headlines kept coming. In 2014, Katt and Suge Knight were both arrested after allegedly taking a paparazzo's camera. But the media twisted the story, painting them as out-of-control celebrities. What they didn't report: that the paparazzi were trying to film Suge's 5-year-old son. When Katt was asked about it later, he responded with clarity and sarcasm. Allegedly, he said, "But tell me this when you hear the full story, does that change how you frame it? These aren't isolated events. They are part of a painful pattern, one that blends racial profiling, media distortion, and a justice system that rarely offers justice." And when people like Katt Williams speak out, they're not just telling their story, they're sounding an alarm for everyone still hoping the system will change before another window shatters. Another life is traumatized, and another excuse is handed to the public. Let's rewind for a moment, back to Beverly Hills, a meeting with a hologram company, and a quiet alley behind Rodeo Drive. That's where Katt Williams and Suge Knight were headed, with Suge's 5-year-old son tagging along. Before going inside, the boy ran behind a dumpster to relieve himself an innocent moment, until a bystander started filming. The woman claimed she thought the child was Katt's, and just like that, the situation spiraled. That minor incident almost cost Katt and Suge 20 years of their lives. Yes, 20 years over a child urinating behind a dumpster and an accusation that they had assaulted someone. If it hadn't been for security footage from Beverly Hills proving otherwise, they might have been locked away. "They had no problem sending us up the river," Katt later said. "We couldn't have possibly done what we were accused of."
I have been stopped by the police about 4 times in the last 60 days.
A total of 5 times I've been pulled over.
Probably more than 20 times.
It's more times than I care to remember. But what you do know is how a very familiar feeling comes each time I'm stopped.
When I see a police officer behind me and the flashes go off, or they're just driving behind me, I'm nervous.
I'm conscious of my speed limit.
It's always nerve-wracking for me.
Fast forward to 2016, Katt was arrested for separate times that year, all 4 different altercations. Then came another arrest in 2018, this time tied to a dispute over a dog. Turned out he had an outstanding warrant. But through it all, the media was laser-focused on painting him as unstable and volatile. The same narrative, now being weaponized against William McNeil Jr. to justify the unjustifiable force used against him by Jacksonville police. But the deeper you look, the worse it gets. McNeil's legal team recently revealed that during the state's so-called investigation into whether the officers broke the law, no one from the state attorney's office ever contacted William, the actual victim. Not once. According to his lawyer, Harry Daniels, this wasn't just negligence, it was whitewashing, he said flatly. How can you rule out criminal wrongdoing when you haven't even spoken to the person who was assaulted? That omission isn't just unusual, it's outrageous. In any legitimate criminal investigation, the victim's voice is central. But here, William was sidelined. And then there's the lie. The officers claimed William reached for a knife. The video shows otherwise, his hands were visible the entire time. Even more absurd, they accused him of not wearing a seatbelt, while literally being the ones who unbuckled it before dragging him from the car. This wasn't just misconduct. It was a carefully constructed lie, and a cover-up. And it doesn't stop there. The same state attorney's office that cleared the officers in William McNeil Jr.'s case has developed a reputation that's hard to ignore. Over the years, this office has been at the center of a troubling pattern. Repeated use-of-force incidents involving police officers, some captured clearly on video, and still, not a single charge brought forward. It's as if video evidence, eyewitness accounts, and public outcry just bounce off a wall of legal immunity. You'd think body cam footage would be the final word in truth, but somehow, it isn't. Somehow, it keeps happening. Police use questionable force. Internal Affairs conducts a review. Prosecutors declare no wrongdoing, and the case disappears into the fog. Meanwhile, the people brutalized in those encounters are left picking up the pieces, physically hurt, emotionally shaken, and permanently scarred by a system that was supposed to protect them. This isn't just negligence. It's a culture, a systemic reflex to protect power, not people. And in Florida, especially in places like Jacksonville, that culture runs deep. It shows up not just in police behavior, but in the way the justice system responds, or rather, refuses to respond. But this time, Williams' legal team isn't rolling over. They've made it clear, this fight is going federal. They're preparing to file civil rights charges, invoking federal protections that supersede state bias. According to Williams' attorney, Harry Daniels, every part of this case, from the original stop to the violent arrest to the deeply flawed investigation, was a violation of McNeil's constitutional rights. And Daniels isn't holding back. He's calling out not just the deputies involved, but the state attorney's office itself, accusing it of colluding with the local sheriff's department to bury misconduct and shield officers from accountability. And the facts support that claim. During what the state claimed was a thorough investigation, no one from the prosecutor's office even contacted William McNeil, the victim. Not once. No phone call. No interview. No request for a statement. Instead, the office made a final ruling, no criminality, without even hearing the first-hand account of the man they were supposedly investigating on behalf of. Let's call that what it is. A mockery of justice. Daniels said it plainly. You can't reach a conclusion about whether a crime occurred when you never even speak to the person who was attacked. And he's right. If you're investigating a mugging, you talk to the person who was mugged. If you're investigating a beating, you speak to the person who was beaten. But somehow, when the alleged attackers wear badges, that basic standard seems to vanish. And here's where the story takes a strange, almost dystopian turn. While William McNeil is still recovering from the emotional and physical trauma of his arrest, Florida's political leadership is moving in a direction that feels straight out of a satire script. Enter Attorney General James Ethmere, a man who has made a name for himself by championing harsh policing policies, cracking down on protesters, and defending some of the most controversial law enforcement actions in recent memory. But even for Ethmere, his latest proposal has raised eyebrows and alarm bells. He's now backing a bizarre and deeply troubling initiative known as Alligator Alcatraz. And no, that's not a nickname, that's the official code name. The plan: construct a remote prison facility in the Florida Everglades, surrounded by swamp water and populated with actual alligators as a natural deterrent to escape. Yes, real alligators. As in, live, apex predators being used as an unofficial security perimeter for a correctional facility. At first glance, it sounds like a dystopian parody. But according to state documents and local reports, the project is very real. This past weekend, a group of lawmakers were invited for a private tour of the still under construction site. What they saw sparked immediate backlash. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a Florida Democrat, described the detention center as appalling and inhumane. In a scathing press conference afterward, she stated, "This is an outrageous environment to detain anyone, citizen, immigrant, anyone. It's unsafe, unsanitary, and cruel. This place needs to be shut the hell down." Yet despite the backlash, Ethmere continues to push the project forward, claiming it's an innovative solution to rising incarceration rates and prison overcrowding. Critics, however, see something much darker. They say it's a grotesque symbol of how dehumanized incarceration has become in Florida, particularly for marginalized communities. And here's the kicker: the same sheriff's departments and state prosecutors currently under fire for their treatment of Black residents like William McNeil are being politically and financially supported by the same Attorney General backing Alligator Alcatraz. It paints a grim picture, one in which law enforcement overreach, racial profiling, and unchecked abuse are not just tolerated, but emboldened by state power. For William, the stakes couldn't be higher. He's still healing, still reliving the trauma of that day. He's still trying to make sense of how a calm question, "Why was I stopped?" ended with him bloodied, concussed, and arrested. And now, the people who allowed it to happen are not just being protected, they're being promoted. But this story isn't over. Behind the scenes, there's movement. Civil rights organizations are circling. Federal attorneys are watching. Local activists are gathering documents, filing FOIA requests, and holding town halls. And quietly, there are signs that pressure is starting to build. Some records have mysteriously vanished. Some officials are dodging calls. Others, sources say, are lawyering up. It's clear that something's about to break. Because what happened to William McNeil wasn't a glitch in the system. It was the system functioning exactly as it was built. But now, with federal attention looming and the truth harder to bury, that system is under a microscope. And when it cracks, when accountability finally breaks through the silence, it won't just be the Jacksonville Police Department facing consequences. It'll be the entire Florida justice apparatus. from the sheriff's offices to the state prosecutors to the alligator-backed ambitions of James Ethmere, that finds itself on trial. Democratic Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz called it disturbing and vile, urging that the site be shut down immediately. "This is an appalling environment to detain anyone," she said. "This place needs to be shut the hell down." Meanwhile, back in Jacksonville, William McNeil Jr. is still healing, physically and emotionally, from a violent arrest he didn't provoke, and the same Attorney General. Pushing swamp prisons is also supporting the very sheriff's department accused of brutalizing him. Ethmere's agenda. Many believe it's aimed squarely at over-policing and over-punishing black communities, but the story isn't over. Not even close. Civil rights groups are mobilizing. Local organizers are collecting records. Whispers are growing louder about missing documents, unanswered calls, and internal panic. The pressure is mounting, not just on Jacksonville PD, but on the entire legal apparatus that let this happen. And when the truth finally breaks through, it won't be just one city in the spotlight. It'll be the whole system on trial.